Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, yes, indeed, we'll be joined now by Senator Ibrahim Shekarau, former governor of Kano State and former minister of education. But just before we get to him, I'd like to also let our viewers know that some news coming through is that the NARD have suspended the strike. But we'll get you more updates on that as we progress. But let's get on to the Senator. Good morning, Senator. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. How are you?
Well, doing great. Yeah,
Thank you.
Well, I haven't listened to the president's speech over the weekend and some parts of it this morning. Of course, there will always be several views and perspectives about what this speech, was about, vis-a-vis what people consider the reality on ground, even though they say perception is some people's reality. But from your perspective, what do you think of all of this?
Well, I think, Mr. Chamberlain, on the whole, I congratulate the president and the entire citizens of Nigeria for attaining this period of our 61st independence. Mr. President's speech, by my assessment, is encouraging and reassuring, especially on the area of insecurity that is ravaging virtually every part of Nigeria. I think this, taking this as top priority issue, and Mr. President even referred to the constitutional provision to remind Nigerians and remind himself indeed that the issue of security should be top priority for his government. And from the recent actions that we have seen by the various armed forces, particularly in the hotspots areas in Zamfara and some other states in the southeastern part of Nigeria, has reassured the citizens that the government is really moving forward. I think even though the problem is still very much on the increase, but I think the effort being made and the newly acquired weapons by the Air Force, the new aircraft, the jet fighters, and the acquisition of many more equipments and facilities by the government seem to be reassuring us. The only thing I will add is that various governments, particularly at the state level, should try to involve and create some mechanism to involve the communities. Most of these things are happening in the rural areas, and we need to bring in the community leaders. And security is largely about information, intelligence gathering. And unless we use the people on ground to get the information, the movement of the bandits, their operations, the armed forces may not be hitting the right targets. So I think on the whole, while we sympathize with the situation and we sympathize with the various communities that are facing these challenges, I think we need to support the government and encourage the government to do more. A lot more need to be done on the whole, I think.
But Senator, much as in that speech, he did say that the last 18 months has been the most challenging time. He even doubted if we've witnessed any such challenge in the history of the country. But, for the several areas, several parts of the country who are feeling the pinch about security have consistently, looked at certain areas of things and suggestions of what needs to be done. And almost quite a number of those things, or a number of them, feel that it's, not been adhered to or it's fallen on deaf ears, and actually a lot could have been done. So is it understandable where many think that, look, in spite of all of those that they've reeled out, what they're trying to do, the results on ground are completely different to what is being said?
Well, I quite agree that the challenges are mounting by the days, but I also understand that the security architecture is continuously being reviewed by the government. And a lot of people are showing their concern. A lot of efforts are being made. I am aware, for example, in the Senate, the various committees responsible for various security issues have been meeting, and a lot of suggestions are almost on daily basis being dished out. The committees have been inviting the service chiefs, having discussions, and we go back to our various constituencies, discussing with our communities, taking suggestions and recommendations and rubbing minds. Some of these things, certainly you don't do them on the street and on the pages of newspapers, but I am aware that a lot is being put on the table as far as continuous reviewing of the security arrangements and the challenges. Agreed, nobody is in doubt that within the couple of months back, we have seen very serious security challenges. But I think I'm very optimistic that with all these efforts, with all the concern, we will be getting somewhere. I'm not very pessimistic that we are not going to get it right, but it is gradually being addressed at various levels.
Find out in this distinguished senator is that, you know, in the president's speech, many were looking for some measure of hope, while others feel, well, it looked at the issues, the topical issues, as opposed to a visionary statement and all those things. But, you know, one thing that gives a number of people concern is the fact that youths are seemingly ignored generally. And in that speech also, the president said he will personally do everything he can to bring in more youths into government. The question that I'm just wondering, you know, about concerning that one is it just left to the president alone to do that, the federal government alone to do that, or it is something that should be taken in our psyche as a nation, find a way to ensure that we bring in the young people into the sphere of things so that they can be well prepared to take on the responsibilities of the leadership that will definitely be thrust on them in the near or far future.
Well, I quite agree that the issue of youth restiveness is a very serious challenge. I think the pronouncement by the president that the government is concerned, the government is determined to look into the issue of youth development, youth growth, youth employment is very reassuring. And I don't believe it's going to be just the responsibility of the federal government. The business of keeping the youth busy is virtually everybody's responsibility. Federal government, state government, local government, community leaders, religious leaders. It is true there is a very serious challenge of unemployment. And as we always say in my constituency of education, you either keep them busy or they'll keep you busy. And I think this is exactly what we're facing. We must continue to see how to keep our youth busy and so that they don't keep us busy by the insecurity challenges and the various restiveness. So I think the president's statement is like reminding all of us that we have to see this issue of youth engagement in useful commitments. A lot of issues need to be initiated. I have the feeling that we need to find a way of reassuring the youth by inventing and institutionalizing issues of skill acquisition. It's not just enough to go to school and finish off as a graduate in various fields. In addition to that, we need to put in place skill acquisition processes so that apart from the various certificates someone that has been to school will acquire, you will need to have some skill, some trade that you need to use to really be self-reliant and be self-employed. And it's not just even the issue of those that go to school. We have to go back to the rural areas. What are we doing to engage the youth on our various lands in farming activities of the various sectors of the farming sector? So this is a challenge, not only to the federal government, and the fact that the president has recognized this and has mentioned this is like telling all of us that, yes, this is a problem on the table and all hands must be on deck. So my view is that to address this issue of youth empowerment, youth involvement, the government is always expected to show the way, to lead, to bring up policies and programs so that the various communities will be organized and initiate various ways of getting the youth involved. So I quite agree it's not just the business of the federal government, but the government has to show the way, the government has to provide the enabling environment through policies, through programs, and to really encourage the various community leaders, the various religious leaders, the various leaders, even within the youth, to engage them. We have very many talented youth who, given the opportunity, will really contribute towards the growth and development of our communities and Nigeria as a whole. So I think it's not just the business of the federal government, it's not just the business of Mr. President, but the responsibility of all the governments is to really create the enabling environment through policies, through programs, through possibly even legislation. Right now, I have on the table, I'm considering and trying to see how we can propose a bill for compulsory skill acquisition programs, so that after graduating either from secondary school or from the university, you don't just jump into the market of unemployment. You must go for some training, whether 1 year or 2 years, to acquire a certain skill. We have vast opportunities across the country. If we really engage the youth in various skill acquisition, some training within 6 months, 1 year, 2 years,
right.
Many of them will even prefer to be self-reliant, using the skills they have acquired than even waiting for anybody to employ them.
You know, Senator, governments at different levels always want to start and finish their projects within, their own time of election, where they were elected. When you speak about issues that need to be initiated or programs that need to be initiated, how much time, or do you really think that this government can initiate such projects and get it completed, especially now that we see a lot of jostling going on, the northern governors saying one thing, southern governors talking about zoning. So, and I know you have spoken about that some time ago. Has your views changed in any case about what both sets of governors are talking about now, zoning?
Well, Chamberlain, it is very unfortunate and very disappointing. I feel ashamed that we've gotten to that level, level of reducing national issues to a kind of gang-up arrangement. It's not going to be in the interest of democracy, in the interest of our growth as a nation. Southern governors ganging up, northern governors ganging up into one thing or the other, as if we fighting one another. If it were governors of APC, governors of PDP, governors of whatever party are coming together to discuss issues that will put on the table before their political parties or their manifestos, the constitutions of the various parties, that is a different matter. But I'm afraid we are gradually reducing issues to regional matters, and it's certainly not going to help us. Rather than they being busy talking about all of these challenges, I would have preferred seeing them uniting as a team of governors and coming up with proposals, coming up with common positions on various national challenges like this insecurity, like the issue of education, like the issue of agriculture. We have quite a lot to learn from one another across the Federation. But this issue of spitting fire as to 1,000 governors saying it has to be here, other governors saying it must be here. You see, my idea of balance in which you slightly referred to, I still hold the view that we need to carry every part of Nigeria along. And democracy and the process of the democratic process does not require all the time you must have specific laws in the Constitution or various laws being promulgated. As I mentioned a number of times, you recall I said there is the Constitution of common sense. These are issues that can be resolved through some understanding, through discussion, through cross-fertilization of ideas. But a gang-up which cut across, regardless of the political parties, throwing away the party platforms and ganging up, I think is going to create a very bad blood for all of us. I don't support this, and I condemn it. It's most unfortunate, and it shows that there is no cohesion, there is no understanding of what we are even into government for. It's not about fighting whether you are in the north, in the east, in the south, or whatever. The issue is we get together to discuss how do we move forward. I've said it a number of times, Chamberlain, that there is no state in Nigeria today where you will not find hundreds of capable, qualified people of high integrity that can lead us. So why are we losing our senses that it has to be this side, it has to be that side? I think these are matters for the political parties, not regional gang up. I think this is most unfortunate, and I condemn it. I don't support this, and I urge and advise the governors to really get out of this mediocrity, this it's myopism, this reducing of our leadership to regional crisis. This will be bringing us hundreds of many years back.
It's curious,
I don't support
Senator,
this. And
my apologies. It's curious that you called it so many times. You called it a gang up. I'm just wondering, what do you expect them to do? Is it that there isn't enough understanding of the issues at play, or you think there is some other script being played by the proponents of these ideas?
No, I think both could be possible. It's either most of them don't seem to understand the kind of tension this kind of position is likely to heat up in the Federation. And I would not be surprised if there is some mischievous, hidden agenda behind it for some selfish interest by either individuals or groups who probably must achieve their goal by all means. Is undemocratic. I quite agree that, yes, some people who are saying it's unconstitutional. It's not everything that we'll begin to see It has to be written there in the Constitution. Let me quickly give you an example. The Constitution of Nigeria, none of the Constitution of the political parties that I know specifies in writing that if today I am a presidential candidate nominated by my party from northern part of Nigeria, that my running mate has to come from the southern part of Nigeria and vice versa. It's not written anywhere. But if today, as a citizen of Kano, I become a presidential candidate, and I tell you that my running mate is from Kaduna, or is from Sokoto, or is from Bauchi, without referring to anybody or any constitution, you'll say, I'm crazy, I'm mad. It doesn't work, it doesn't follow. So there is this question of understanding, common sense understanding. You don't have to get it written anywhere. Let me quickly also give you another example. The Electoral Act provides that the president is to nominate national commissioners of INEC 2 per zone. It stops at that. It didn't say these two must come from the zone from 2 different states. If the president decides to pick a sister and a brother from the same family and nominate them from X zone, he has not violated any constitution. But the example we had not too long ago of our sister Loretta was not disqualified because she wasn't capable, because she was not qualified, and so on. The issue was that of morality. I am in the committee of INEC. We discussed this and we brought it to the floor of the Senate. The issue was that there was already a citizen of Delta State as a national commissioner in INEC. And Loretta happened to come from Delta State as a second nominee. To complete the 2, the president needs to nominate from a particular zone, that is South-South, for example. We said, no, this is not on. But if the federal government or the president decides to challenge this in court, I think it's likely to win, because the Constitution or the Electoral Act said 2 per zone. It didn't say these 2 must come from A state and B state. But everyone will agree. Why will the 2 come from the same state? So this is issues of common sense. So those of us reducing all of these things, that unless something is written in the Constitution, you cannot place it on the table. The issue of 6 geopolitical zones is nowhere in the Constitution of Nigeria today. But tell me, what will you do today politically in our democratic processes without referring to the 6 geopolitical zones? People spit fire. If there are things to be shared and you share it among 4 zones and 2 or 1 are left out, there will be an outcry that this is not fair distribution. And yet, the Constitution hasn't such a provision that whatever you do, you must consider all of these 6 geopolitical zones.
All right, Senator, just give us a moment. We'll return to that train of thought. Hope you don't lose it when we return. Just give us a moment. We'll be back. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Senator Ibrahim Shekarau will still have him with us in our studios in Abuja. You know, concerning that point that you were making about what should be done, there are those who think, isn't there a cost? Because they've looked at the circumstances at the moment concerning distribution of projects, allocation of resources, personnel drawn from different parts of the country, and many of them just thought that justice has not been seen to have been done, given the fact that we are a diverse country. And so how we leverage on that is a different kettle of fish entirely. So if we look at that question in isolation, we may be missing the point, saying, well, describing it as you've said, a gang up. So in the circumstance, how should it have been approached?
You, Chamberlain, you see, there is nothing wrong in various parts of Nigeria agitating for one thing or the other. My quarrel is the gang up where you take a stand, it must be this, it must be that. We need to go to the table and discuss. There are many issues. We are still a growing nation. We are still trying to understand ourselves. We are still trying to create an environment of better understanding. Some of these issues are as a result of having wrong people in court, because what we require now is a fair deal. Let everybody feel that there is some sense of belonging, and it's entirely the responsibility of the leadership at various levels, in particular at the national level, to show this transparently, that every part of Nigeria matters, every geographical location, regardless of ethnic, religious, and whatever. We need to have some sense of belonging. The ordinary Nigerian is not expecting too much from the leadership. What he's expecting is show of concern to justify there is the fairness in the deals of government. And as I said, this is attitudinal. We have sufficient laws in the Constitution, in the various legislation to guide us to do all of this. Unfortunately, we are still trying to see it done properly. So I think the problem is as a result of not getting the commitment, the determination, and to show it transparently through our actions, as you rightly said, allocation of national resources in terms of projects, in terms of programs. People need to see it done. Justice is not just to do justice, but it must be seen to have been done. So I quite agree we need to do what I call restoration of confidence in governance. We need to restore the confidence of the Nigerian citizens to the issue of governance. And this is not just left to the federal level. Even at the state level, we need to do quite a lot to generate this concern. So the Constitution requires us in many places to ensure spread in all government business. And this is where the challenge comes in. And while we are making
if I could just ask you, put it this way,
to make sure there is this.
Since the subject matter is being discussed, and you think, well, there could be better approach to that. So
yes,
perhaps in consideration of those approach that you have suggested, I mean, all of those notwithstanding, where do you think, what part of the country do you think the next president of the country should come from in the interest of equity, justice, so that it would have been seen to have been done?
Well, you see, I've said it before. As far as the party I belong is concerned, the APC, my proposal is that now that President Buhari is from the northern part of the country, he has done his 8 years, let's beam the search of the searchlight to the southern part of Nigeria. Not because we don't have enough competent people up north. I don't really subscribe to the argument that if you say, okay, let the other part of Nigeria produce the leader, that does not mean you are throwing to the dogs the issue of competence, the issue of credibility, and so on. While I agree we should go for the best and therefore throw it open regardless of which part of the country, but we must also be mindful of the aspect of the sense of belonging. You see, we must be mindful of the perception to give some sense of belonging to every part of Nigeria. I subscribe to the view that we should be talking of the north and south, but where I disagree with the southern governors is coming together to gang up and say it must be our case. I think this is purely the party affairs. I am aware, I don't know whether it is still there, the PDP had it in its constitution, there's rotational presidency between the north and the south. Other parties left it open. So whether it is written or not written, we must bring on board what I still insist, the constitution of common sense, some rationality some understanding. This will not lead us to probably throwing away attributes of competence, of capability, and getting the right person on board. We are still growing, we are still managing this democracy that is just 20 or so years old, and we must continue to build it up. If we had remained where continued with where we were in the 50s and the 60s without the various military interventions, I'm sure we probably would have overcome all of this. But since we got so many interruptions, we still have to continue to manage the situation by giving every part of Nigeria some sense of belonging. But my argument is that we must not do this at the point of threat, that it must be me, it must be you, it must be him. We need to come together, and I think this is more of political parties' issues. That's why I said, if, for example, APC governors in the South believe that this is the time the South should produce the president, they should approach their colleagues in APC and discuss it in the boardroom, in-house matter, and let them sort it out. If it is the business the concern of the party consensus, that this is where the party chairman should go, this is where the president should go, and so on. If you are saying we should not take into consideration where we should try to balance up the president of the federation, why are we doing the same thing, even the political leadership? I'm aware one of the requirements of INEC to get the party registered is its national officers must be so well spread across 2/3 of the states of the federation. This is just to ensure that the leadership of all political parties will have enough representation from different of the country. Why don't we argue that anybody can come and be chairman and be secretary? We are doing this balancing. If you take chairman, this one takes secretary, this one takes treasurer, and so on at the leadership of the parties. All the parties do this. So the same thing applies even in governance. We should try to accommodate difference of parts of Nigeria. My point of disagreement with the gang up groups like the Southern governors is coming to gang up and say it must be our time. No, this is wrong. It's purely party issues, and I ask the political parties to go into their boardrooms and sort these things out among themselves. It's not about regional gang up of either south, east, north. I think this will not give us the best of the unity that we are aspiring to have in this country.
It's interesting that, there are 2 times the Southern governors have come together to talk about this issue. The first was the Lagos Declaration, where the word should was used, and then the Enugu Declaration, where the word must was used. Maybe it was an error, I don't know, but I'll leave that to politicians to do.
But, I think it's not even the issue of the words that bothers me. Whether you say should, whether you say must, you see, I still insist zoning or balancing or the spread of political office holders through the elective offices is purely a party business.
And not something for governors.
Where you now bring... So yeah, because if the Southern governors gang up, tomorrow another group will gang up and say it must be us.
Okay, but essentially what you're saying is it is something that politicians, party politics should deal with, and not, governors who are in office, who are supposed to foster national integration. Because that's what Section 15, sub 2 of the Constitution says. National integration shall be actively encouraged, while discrimination on the grounds of place of origin, sex, religion, status, ethnic or linguistic association, or ties shall be prohibited. In your opinion, it would seem like, some elements like this is your belief, and so many others, is that national integration should be encouraged. But it would seem, Your Excellency,
Absolutely.
that this sentiment of the Constitution is not even being trickled down to the people in the various localities all over the nation. And one wonders why, you know, this kind of ideology that is being discussed at the high levels of governors, of presidency and all, they don't seem to be taken down to the people in the localities, in the different localities, even though every politician is from one ward or another. This national integration thing, do you think we're doing a significant work in ensuring that it gets down to the people at the various localities, especially at the ward levels, in order to foster this whole national integration thing we're talking about?
Well, I think, you see, in the process of implementing this national integration, I quite agree with you that it has to trickle down to the lowest level. But the leadership has the responsibility of speaking for the people. That's why you have people elected to represent them. It's not a matter that you go to the villages, to the wards, to ask them whether where will the presidency go or where will the office of the governor go and so on. And I want to correct the impression that I'm not quarreling with the fact that governors are discussing the issue of where the president will come. My quarrel is that they should not be ganging up on regional basis. I'm sure if you talk to all the governors, they may hold different opinions, which is democratic. And, but that does not mean they should gang up, and whether they use the word should or shall or must is immaterial. It is the action
Senator, you know, there were those who think that
a regional group to do.
There are those who think that
this
is not the first time that this kind of meeting is holding, because just before the 2015 elections, Mr. John Kerry was in the country, and he held a meeting with groups including northern governors, both of the PDP and the opposition party, and then it was perceived as though, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why is that kind of meeting holding? So people refer to that as well as one of those scenarios. And so when this happened, they wonder, why is it that some sections seem not to be happy with this when a similar thing occurred with John Kerry at the time?
No. I think, you see, it's the coming together. There's nothing wrong in coming together from a particular side of the country to discuss issues of national interest, but not really putting it on the table. This has to be, this is our right, this must be done. My argument, Chamberlain, is still that we need to discuss in-house within our parties. Issue of zoning any of these positions, elected positions, even at the state level. I am aware of many states in Nigeria today where you have the arrangement, if the governor this time is from this senatorial zone, the argument is that it has to be the next senatorial zone. All these things are sorted out, trickling down, even up to the level of the local governments, up to the ward, trying to do this sense of belonging. I'm not saying it's totally wrong for various groups in different parts of Nigeria to get together to discuss issues of common interest. But while doing that, we must be mindful of the interest of others, and we must be mindful of the words we use and coming together. Governors are very prominent people in the scheme of things in governance. They are leaders, so they must be careful in coming together to make some pronouncements that will amount to instigating the general public to take a stand and see it as a regional fight. That is my quarrel. They should be discussing some of these things in-house across board. There's nothing wrong at Governors Forum meeting, the 36 of them, putting all of these in table. They're all mature and responsible people. The fact that they got to the level of being elected as governors, we see them as responsible people. They can sit together and discuss and beat the table in the boardroom and come to some consensus and understanding so that we want to see the 36 of them emerging and giving one position and advising their respective political parties.
Well, Senator, that will be very interesting if they can all take one position. Because in the democracy, I mean, you will expect several people to disagree about certain things. In fact, as a former governor yourself, there's this matter that's also making the rounds, because, I mean, we have to wind down in the next couple of minutes. But when it has to do with that Executive Order 10, that the governors were not exactly happy with the federal government about, where they were supposed to deduct money from source for the local governments, talking about financial autonomy. So do you think that, for instance, that was the best way to have approached that?
Well, I think I am for the total autonomy of the local government. And with or without any law, I implemented it. I want to immodestly say that for the 8 years that I led the government of Kano State, I never was held any 1 naira of any of my 44 local governments. The day we collect the details of the allocation to the local governments, immediately the commissioner and the accountant general returns back from the Abuja allocation meeting. The next day, we call all the chairmen and give out checks and release all of their funds. So I think I was surprised when there was this quarrel of autonomy or no autonomy of the local government. This is almost given. I didn't wait for any agitation. I didn't wait for any any executive order, presidential order to tell me to release the funds of the local government. All we did through the State Assembly, we released all of their funds, but we came up with some legislation to guide their operations, to guide the spending, the project, and all was well for the 8 years that were there. And by extension, I was also releasing all of the monies belonging to the judiciary and the State Assembly. We, at the end of every quarter, we release all of their monies for the next quarter. So that too, we didn't have to wait until the assembly staff go on strike, the judiciary going on strike. I really subscribe to allowing them to operate through their own funding as provided by the Constitution. So I'm totally for the autonomy of the local governments and the various other sectors of government, the judiciary and the legislature. And I'm happy for the 8 years I did this. I implemented this to the fullest.
All right, Senator Ibrahim Shekarau, former governor of Kano State, former minister of education, we do thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.